Hello, I'm starting a little bit early for the live cast. If you're listening, you can say hello. I'm broadcasting on YouTube and on Facebook. And I guess, again, if you're listening, just say hello and I'll know you're there. I may not be able to respond to you, but I will try. Um, we're going to go live in a little bit under 4 minutes. It's a Christian news show, and you'll be surprised. Until showtime. We're down to 3 minutes and having some fun with Blog Talk Radio, all of a sudden rejecting my direct connect. So we'll see how things go. I'm using my phone to call in. So everything else is working for StreamYard, and that side of things is working quite well, but not too well today for Blog Talk Radio. And we'll see how things go. It's going to be a very, very interesting show. If you are listening and you're in the Rochester, New York area, I do want to let you know that we do have a big event coming up in Rochester, New York. It is called the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conference. I will be there, and I have a table. I'm going to be talking about the about my show, Sutliffian Report, and I'm going to be hawking my books there. I have a co-author that will be there also. We authored a book on Proverbs, a book of wisdom for boys. It's a devotional. So I'll have books there on the dangers of Islam and civilization jihad, and I will be promoting devotionals as well as the show. So if you're here in the Rochester area and you get a chance to listen, please do. I'm looking forward to an incredible night of learning. Day of learning is what I should say. So that's coming up in Rochester, New York on November 6th. So if you're in the area, come join us. It'll be at First Bible Baptist. And we are going to go live. We're down to the last minute and a half. And we'll see how things go. I noticed that the... Until showtime. Yeah, we're down to 1 minute. It's a crazy thing. It is not bringing me back into BTR, so I've had to call in and just waiting for things to straighten up there. We'll see. Oh, joy of joy. Sometimes things just don't work the way you want them, but that's reality. Some things you just sit there and wait for things to go, but all things work together for the good of those who love Christ Jesus. So we've got a ways to go. This is going to be one interesting show. A lot of news this week. I don't know if I'm going to get through it all. We will see. Some of this stuff should really surprise you. If you're staying up on things, we'll see. I have interviews I wanted to do. I had one cancel out this week and canceled out last week, so I don't know what we're going to do with that one. But there's a lot, like I said, a lot of news that will surprise you. We're going live now. Hello, welcome to the Sutliffian Report, the show where the truth always wins and the news is never hidden. I want to tell you, we have a power-packed show to go with news from all over the world to share that much of it has been hidden. Sadly, they are hiding the truth over and over again from you. So this is what I do. I try to bring it out and share with you. And I'm, I get concerned when I see things being hidden. But again, this is a Christian show, and I always start with the devotions, reading from the scripture. Today, we're going to read 1 Corinthians 3:18 to 23. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seems to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He takes the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. Therefore, let no man glory in men, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come. All are yours. And you are Christ, and Christ is God's. So vanity is about yourself. Solomon said, All is vanity. Seeking knowledge to be puffed up is vanity. As Paul says, the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. That does not mean it is foolish to seek knowledge, but the seeking of anything, including the attaining of knowledge, for the purpose of lifting yourself up, is vanity. Even in our own thoughts, our vain nature speaks loudly. There it is, all about us. So yeah, what do we want? What do we desire? Sadly, often the answer to these questions is simple: whatever pleases us for the moment. These thoughts are sinful. What does it matter, you may be thinking? But this God who loves us knows our thoughts. For many of us, that should bring shame and fear that this God who loves us should be listening to our horrible, selfish thoughts inside our heads. But for one thing, God hears our thoughts, He listens to our prayers. We do not need to be loud to be heard by God. We do not need to raise our voice to be heard by the Most High. No, we can be silent and still and call upon His name and ask of Him what is on our hearts, because He listens. Dear Lord Jesus, you hear my voice, whether I speak out loud or I'm silent. Speaking with the cries of my spirit, you alone hear my silent pleas. You alone answer my simple and often foolish requests. You alone are there for me when there's no one else. Lord, may I be yours in everything I think, as well as everything I say and do. In Jesus' name, amen. So this week, if you've been paying attention, COVID mandates are wreaking havoc in urban areas where mayors are forcing their police to be vaccinated or get lost. They were going after the healthcare workers. Now it's, oh, let's get rid of those police. Oh, they may not be vaccinated. Well, we're going to get into some of the dangers about vaccination and things. I cover that every week, but I do want to cover this story by Newsmax. I saw this and I have to sit there and go, well, it's the same people. We're having the same problem. And these were the same ones who were calling out and saying, well, let's defund the police. It's the same exact towns. It's the same exact cities. Oh, so it's just a different label. So now they're trying to get rid of the police by saying, oh, you're not vaccinated. Oh, same exact places. Keep listening. So Mayor Lightfoot basically has told law enforcement this past week, if you show up on this past Friday without proof of vaccination, you're being put on unpaid leave. As a result, detectives and higher-ups are making those daily calls that promotions remove them from. Newsmax noted that police unions and officers are pushing back by filing lawsuits to block the mandates. In Chicago, the head of the police union called on members to defy the city's Friday deadline for reporting their COVID-19 vaccination status. Again, that's a violation of your HIPAA rights. Think about that. Seattle's police department sent detectives and non-patrol officers to emergency calls this past week because of the shortage of patrol officers that union leaders fear will become worse because of vaccine mandates. The standoffs are playing out at a time when many police departments already are dealing with surging homicide rates and staff shortages unrelated to the vaccine. Cities and police leaders are now weighing the risk of losing more officers to resignations, firings, or suspensions over the refusal to get vaccinated. Chicago's mayor on Friday filed a complaint in court against the leader of the local Fraternal Order of Police, accusing him of engaging in, supporting, and encouraging work stoppage or strike. Are you listening, people? This is, again, Chicago. Well, that's one of those major cities that tried to defund the police. Are you seeing how this is You're hearing the same things again. It's kind of sad. Again, so Chicago's mayor on Friday filed a complaint in court against the leader of the local Fraternal Order of Police, accusing him of engaging in, supporting, and encouraging work stoppage or strike by saying the city's more than 12,000 uniformed officers should ignore the order to report their vaccination status. You know what? He's right. It is against your HIPAA rights. The federal government passed this law. Are they saying you don't have those rights anymore? Well, again, rights like this, rights are things that were given to us by God. It's not just by the government, and that's what they're forgetting. See, the current government thinks they give you your rights, but our Constitution tells you those rights come to us from God. That's important and direly important that you keep that in mind. On Thursday, Mayor Lori Lightfoot said officers would not be sent home if they showed up to work Friday and refused to provide their information. She said instead, they would be put on unpaid leave after the weekend because confirming compliance would take a few days. Refusing to provide the information, Lightfoot said, would constitute an act of insubordination. It's not considered nonviolent protest. I mean, they didn't do anything. They didn't agree with an unconstitutional order, which they are not allowed to enforce. So why is the mayor enforcing it? Again, these are unconstitutional laws or mandates. Again, a mandate is not a law. There's nothing there that makes it legal to do this. Doesn't matter what state you're in. Doesn't matter where you live. These mandates are unconstitutional. And that is the total truth about what's going on behind this. Let's go on. John Costanza, president of the FOP, the Fraternity of Police, local in Chicago, said about half of his members have not been vaccinated and called a mandate requiring inoculation absolutely wrong. Ken, I like what John Catanzara, president, said of the president of the FOP local in Chicago said. He's exactly right. It is absolutely wrong. He said they're willing to go into a no-pay status at midnight this past Friday and get sent home. He said, suggesting during an appearance on Fox News that the city could not afford to lose police officers. The reality is, he says, we have a profession nobody else wants to do right now, and they can't get anybody to go into the police academy, he said. In Los Angeles County, Sheriff Alex Villanova said he won't force his 18,000 employees to be vaccinated despite a county mandate. I don't want to be in a position to lose 5 to 10% of my workforce overnight, he said last week. Hundreds of police officers in San Diego said they would consider quitting instead of complying with a vaccine mandate. Resistance is bubbling even through the first responders that have been hit hard by COVID-19. More than 460 law enforcement officers have died from the virus, according to the Officer Down Memorial page, which tracks deaths in the line of duty. Disputes over government and business vaccine requirements have spilled over into a variety of workplaces, including one of the nation's premier nuclear weapons labs and the NBA. Workers at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, the birthplace of the atomic bomb, faced a deadline Friday to get vaccinated or risk being fired. A New Mexico judge denied last-minute requests by dozens of scientists and others to block the mandate. In the NBA, the Brooklyn Nets are not allowing star Kyrie Irving to practice or play until he's vaccinated. The number of Americans getting vaccines has steadily increased over the past 3 months as boosters have become available and mandates have taken effect. The number of shots administered per day has topped 840,000 on average. No national statistics show the vaccination rate for America's first responders, but individual police and fire departments across the country have reported figures far below the national rate of, quote, 77% for adults who have had at least one dose. Well, this could be because those people who are first responders tend to be what we would call informed. What do I mean by that? Well, an informed voter is generally what we would call a conservative today. That's something to think about. So are they upset because they know more? Hmm. So that's something to think about. So if you actually look at VAERS data, which is what I suggest to everybody. Hello, Miss Person on Facebook listening. Thank you. I can see your comment. Thank you. Nice for listening. I see a couple others on YouTube. Thank you. There's an amazing truth that this VAERS data, again, which CDC considers 1% of reality. And if there are 16,000 reported killed by the vaccine, that's what VAERS is. It's telling us 16,000 have been killed. What does that say when you add two zeros? More have been killed by the vaccine than have been killed by the COVID-19. That is quite overpowering. And that is something that I'm amazed no one is talking about. Because this is where I get into where are the real newsmen and newswomen? Where are the real journalists today when they won't discuss these things? If that's again, CDC is the one that says VAERS data is 1% of actual reporting. I'm taking them at their word. So I add two zeros to 16,000, and that number overpowers the amount of people dead from COVID-19 by far. Yeah. I want to go back into the Newsmax article and keep continuing on this topic. The union, we're talking about the police union, representing some 1,000 Seattle police personnel, argues that the matter should be subject of labor negotiations. Union President Mike Solon had suggested that the mandate could worsen staffing shortages, which in turn could risk public safety. The department has lost more than 300 officers in the past year and a half and anticipates another mass exodus in the coming weeks, Solon said. Nearly 300 officers in Seattle had either not turned in paperwork showing they were vaccinated or were seeking an exemption from the mayor's office. In recent weeks, judges have rejected attempts by a group of Oregon State Police troopers and Denver police officers trying to block vaccine mandates. On Wednesday, yes, I want you to think about that. On this Wednesday, this is another article there. I want to talk about another thing that was coming up this Wednesday. This past, this just a couple of days, just yesterday. Now, if you're paying attention to things that are happening, I don't know if you've heard this one. Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz apologized while pleading guilty Wednesday to shooting 17 people in 2018. Yes, it's three. This is 3 years ago. People shot 17 people, killing them, and now faces life in prison or the death penalty. Cruz is now 23 years old, and he has pled guilty to 17 counts of first-degree murder for gunning down 14 students and 3 staffers on February 14th of 2018. This was a school where he had been expelled a year earlier. He made some comments there that make me wonder if he really is apologetic and, or he understands what he's done. I can recommend the article. Go and look up Nicholas Cruz and his apology in the courts and his guilty plea. I don't want to give him any props. I would prefer probably not to say his name. Only I think I've heard enough of these false flag cries that this is not a real thing. Well, someone's going to jail, possibly for the death penalty for this. It is not a false flag, people. I like to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I like to check things. And next one article I have to share is another sad event. If you know me, you know I'm concerned about what is happening in public schools. What do I mean by that? I try to stay up. I'm a retired educator. I see things that really, really bother me. Again, what am I talking about? Well, this past week in Loudoun County, Virginia, there has been a loud amount of things happening, and I don't have another way to put it other than the word loud. I wish there was another way to put this. Sadly, there isn't. So, if you haven't heard what's going on in Loudoun County, they had their school board had made a decision to allow boys to use the girls' rooms, the girls' bathrooms, and the girls' locker room, and girls to use the boys' bathroom and boys' locker, um, basically on how they feel. Oh, it's okay. So you identify, you pretend you're a girl for the day. Okay. So they had a case where a girl was raped by a boy in a skirt. Yeah. Well, that story did not end well for the Board of Education. And what's truly sad about this is how it's been portrayed in the news. You ready? Here's how it's been portrayed. It's been kept secret. And this is the part that really got me. ABC, I love the Media Research Center. Like if you've got extra money, throw it their way. They do a great amount of work for you and me. And if you want, I suggest subscribing to MRC, Media Research Center. I like their Newsbusters articles and a lot of other work that they do. But this one article by Jeffrey Dickens and Nicholas Fondarco, it just made me think. And it came out this morning. I've been following this case since I've seen it start, so I want to share this. It starts out all across the country. Parents are rising up and fighting against leftist policies being forced on them from ultra liberals in the public school system. As radio talk show host Mark Levin recently put it, there's a war against parents and taxpayers by the teachers' unions, the educational bureaucracy, school boards, and the Biden administration. Well, one of those policies on transgender bathrooms may have led to two sexual assaults in Loudoun County, Virginia schools. But you wouldn't know it if you get your story from ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, or MSNBC. You want to know why? They gave zero news time. Despite it now being a key issue in the Virginia governor's race, oh, could that be their real reason for doing this? They don't want you to vote maybe something else than Democrat? Hmm. Keep that in mind. See, Democrat Terry McAuliffe, the current governor, is all for this transgender stuff. And if it makes them look bad, oh, you might vote for someone else. And that's part of what could be going on here, the real reason behind it. Those same liberal news outlets also have yet to cover parents in Loudoun County, Virginia, and Saline, Michigan, standing up to the Biden administration's treatment of parents as threats via lawsuit against Attorney General Merrick Garland. MRC analysts looked at all of the news coverage on ABC, CBS, NBC Evening and Morning News, as well as CNN and MSNBC's coverage. This is from 6 a.m. through midnight Eastern time. They've been looking at this from October 11th, when the Daily Wire first exposed this story, through October 20th. Yes, this is yesterday we're talking about. And they found 0 seconds, not even a single second spent on these following stories. Parents upset at transgender bathroom policies that led to sexual assault of female students in Loudoun County, Virginia. How about this one? 0 seconds on parents suing Biden's Department of Justice for likening them to domestic terrorists. Oh, why would they hide those stories? I want you to think about this. So, the story. Let's think about this. ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC censored Loudoun County School Board covering up a bathroom rape to pass the trans policy. And this was a separate news story, and they covered it up. In bombshell report from the Daily Wire on October 11th, reporter Luke Rosiak exposed how the controversial Loudoun County School Board allegedly covered up the rape of a 15-year-old girl in the girl's bathroom at the hands of a boy in a skirt. just so they could pass a transgender bathroom policy. It was a truly disturbing story that quickly rose to national attention on conservative news outlets. Yet none of the broadcasts of ABC, CBS, NBC, or the liberal cable outlets have touched the story. Oh, it doesn't fit their narrative? Is that what it is? Or are they scared they won't have another Democrat in charge if they let people hear the truth? This is where I get concerned. You listen to these things, and again, I will not hide the news from you. This is something I'm going to always work on telling the truth and getting it out. But as a parent, what does that mean to you if they have kept something from you? In fact, Loudoun County, what really happened with this story is that the school board is now found in violation of the state law for hiding this information, not just from the parents, but from the state. Oh, so who should be fired as a result of this? Should it be the school board members? Should it be the school superintendent? Maybe all of them should go because they've been involved in this masking. I don't know. But if they find someone that's truly tied to keeping this secret, that's bad. What is interesting is that the truth of the matter is the superintendent apologized when he's saying he just figured this out. So if he just figured it out, were the principals keeping this secret? Who were those people responsible for reporting it? Was it the schools, or is it the district superintendent, or is it the school board? Where did this process get disrupted about reporting these sex crimes? Again, required by state law. And then, because it was exposed at a school board meeting that they had been doing this, that they had been hiding it, it wouldn't have come out. It wouldn't have never made conservative news unless, this concerned parent filed Freedom of Information Act and got this information out. We have to say thank you to those people who do those things. I'm filing Freedom of Information Acts a lot. If you have any questions ever, and how to do that, you can contact me always through Facebook. I used to say through LinkedIn, but now I have a lifetime ban because I share the truth. I will not stop. I'm regardless of what happens to my quote social media. I would rather live for Christ and share the truth and not be concerned about some of these other things. Let's go on. My next story comes from, again, an article on basically deceiving. I have a problem with you as American citizens, as Christian men, women, or as listeners as a whole, as people being told deceptive things. Wait till you hear what I'm talking about. In this case, the Department of Justice, I'm going to read you the Department of Justice news line that came out on Monday, this past Monday. This Monday. And wait till I tell you what the truth is about this article. Again, there is deception in a Department of Justice article. It's in a deception in a news release. Would you lie to the people that pay your salary? I mean, most jobs you can get fired from that kind of thing. I have to say the person who wrote this up should be fired. It was deceptive. You should never have a government job if that's what you plan to do, lie to the public. I don't care what job you have. Your job is to get the truth out if you work for the public. Keeping people from hearing the truth, I mean, maybe not telling it, but hiding the truth, that's where I get into trouble. I with whoever, when I see that, it really bothers me. So let me get into this article. It's titled, "A Man Pleads Guilty to Attempting to Provide Material Support to ISIS and al-Nusra Front. Defendant provided money to fund travel of Brooklyn resident to wage jihad in Syria." It starts out, an Illinois man pled guilty today to attempting to provide material support to designated foreign terrorist organizations, the Islamic State of Iraq and Al Sham, which is ISIS. And you know what? That the good thing here that you won't see in most of the United States DOJ information under Obama, they never said this name correctly. Never once. But the DOJ this time actually got it right. This is the correct name of ISIS, Iraq and Al Sham, which is the right hand. And we'll get into that more sometime. And Al Nusra Front. As part of his plea agreement, the defendant agrees to the entry of an order of removal, as he will be removed from the country after completing his sentence. According to court documents, Dilshad Kushnov, 36, of Chicago, encouraged individuals to travel to Syria to wage violent jihad or holy war in 2014 and 2015. For example, on September 28th of 2014, Kushnov urged co-conspirator Akmal Zakharov to engage in jihad. Quote, I hoped that the only reason that is preventing you from jihad is some mistake and flaws that are occurring among the other fighters. Kuzhnov explained that it would be better to help those fighters rather than criticize them. Later in 2014, two Brooklyn residents, Abdurasul Jurabev and Akhor Said Akhmaktev, began planning to travel to Syria to fight for ISIS, a group of individuals in a domestic network based in New York, elsewhere, including Kuzhnov, worked together to raise and contribute money to help fund the trip to Syria. In February 2014, Abror Habibov, Sakirov, Aziz Jan, Rakhmatov, and Kazimov discussed providing money to support Said Akhmatov's travel and expenses in Syria. Now, we have a lot of these names, and they have a lot of thickness to them. You know, that should be a hint. This isn't just a guy from Chicago. It isn't just an Illinois guy. So, what's the truth? Well, the truth is, Dilshad is from Uzbekistan, and he's living in Illinois, in Chicago area. Now, the question is he a U.S. citizen, a refugee, or a permanent resident alien? Those are questions that have not yet been answered by the DOJ, but they saw fitting to exclude that information in a news release. Why is that? Well, Uzbekistan is what kind of country? It's an Islamic country. So you have let people come here from an Islamic country to recruit warriors to go to the jihad. That's the real news story. Well, they might not think it is, but that is the real news story. Now, where can you find these facts? There is a site called Global Fight Against Terrorism Funding. Now, I was looking this up, and I spent some time looking and verified this information. Dilshad Kuzhnov is an Uzbekistan-born man living in Illinois. He pled guilty to helping fund overseas trips for people joining the Islamic State and Al-Nusra Front terrorist groups. He faced his penalty. Again, it's understanding. Now, I want you to understand. He pled guilty today, and he could face a penalty of up to 11 years in prison. Per his plea agreement, he agreed to be removed from the U.S. after completing his sentence. So, are you catching this? He agreed to be removed after completing a sentence. That means he's not a U.S. citizen. So he's not a man from Illinois. That's where, see, that deception. That's what I'm getting at. The DOJ should not be engaging in acts of deception to the public, and yet they did. It's not something I would be proud of. I would be very, this is the stuff You just have to sit there and you shake your head like, how can they do these things? So, yeah, he's going back to Uzbekistan or getting dropped off at any Sharia country that will take him because he's okay with promoting jihad. Scary, scary, scary stuff to think about. The Department of Justice has just engaged in deceit. And what was their real purpose? I mean, I have to sit there and ask all sorts of questions. How can they do this to us? Why? What is the real purpose behind hiding these things from you? I I'm always mind blown when I think about this. Now, I'm hoping to have Todd Bensman on in the next coming week. He might not be here next week, but it will be the week after, at least. He's busy, busy doing important work. Now, Todd Bensman has been a regular guest on this show. He works for the Center for Immigration Studies, and I saw an article he put out yesterday. And as much as I want to hold off this story for a time to interview him, I can't. This is why I say the truth is never hidden on this show. Todd Bensman is one of those people who goes out and gets the story. He doesn't make the story. He goes out and gets the story. He doesn't wait for it to come to him. He does an excellent, excellent job investigating, reporting. Todd is former DHS. He again, his work, I will keep saying over and over again, is outstanding. I do recommend buying his book that's out there this year, America's Covert Border Wars. Please go out there and buy that book. It will surprise you. I know reading that, the details in it kind of surprised me, but there are some things he writes in there that I really had to take a step back and go, whoa, that's not something I expected to see. So again, I'm going to keep promoting Todd Bensman's work. He's a good man. But this article, like I said, I could not wait to share it. This article is entitled "In Historic United States First, National Guard Soldiers Start Arresting Illegal Migrants on the U.S.-Mexico Border." Now, I wrote to Todd about this. This is wow. This is incredible. I mean, to think that this is actually being done, that the National Guard is being used for this. This is excellent. I mean, we have told my nephew was sent down to the border, and he was originally helping to build. He's a CB. He was helping to build the border, and while he was down there, he was told, "Oh, they can't do anything when illegals come over. They can't stop them or anything." Well, there's some things they did to make it difficult for them to come over, and I have to say I kind of snickered at some of the pranks they played and things that kind of made it difficult for the migrants to come into the United States illegally. And I think about that. Yeah, okay, there's a legal way to get here. Then you can stay and you don't have to live in hiding. That's what I would prefer. We don't have a problem with legal migrants. We don't care about that. It's the amount of people coming here legally. And on top of that, it's the amount of terrorists coming here illegally. And Todd also writes about that topic. But let's get into this article. Again, you can find this at the Center for Immigration Studies. He writes, in a dive into new political and legal water, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has initiated the first ever border security operations in which thousands of National Guard troops, newly imbued with civilian arrest authority and given 40 hours of traditional police training in the use of deadly force, have started handcuffing illegally entering migrants on state trespassing charges. Small scale soldiers arrest operations began quietly this past weekend as an unprecedented addition to the state's ongoing Operation Lone Star in close physical coordination with a pre existing border surge of some 1,000 Texas Department of Public Safety officers concentrated in Valverde and Starr counties, but also expected to happen elsewhere. Abbott has been signaling for weeks that he was preparing a more aggressive use of the National Guard. Texas DPS, Department of Public Services Director Stephen McGraw confirmed at the Center for Immigration Studies that the first of some 3,000 policing trained National Guard soldiers to be deployed over the next 6 weeks have begun filling gaps in the line, making arrests and turning their detainees over to DPS officers who will do the investigation and charging. Nobody's ever really used the Guard before in this capacity, McGraw said. We're going to use them to actually secure the border. The governor, the legislature, and the citizens of Texas have made it very clear they want the border secure. It's good for our federal partners as well. The federal government should be thanking the state of Texas, and it'll make the rest of the country safer as we increase the level of security. Um, yeah, I think Director Stephen McGraw is 100% accurate. The relatively few soldiers now deployed will mainly use their new arrest authority to apprehend single, and this is where it gets interesting. Who are they going to arrest? I want you to think about this. They're going to arrest single adult male illegal migrants who trespass along state-built border fencing onto some 142 parcels of private ranch lands. And it refers to the owners. The owners of the ranch lands is what Todd is talking about. Have all entered into state agreements to become complainants. That's something to think about. They're going to they're finally agreeing to be the ones who file the civil charges against the people in misdemeanor and criminal trespassing cases that DPS officers will charge and have been charging since July. McGraw told the Senate the so-called single male runners run because they are still subject to federal instant expulsion policy to control the COVID-19 pandemic. But agency officials also reason that single male adult men may pose greater threat to public safety risks, in that some are likely hiding serious criminal histories or are involved in Mexican cartel drug and human smuggling and trafficking. The state will not arrest adult women. Is that rather sexist when you think about it? Yeah, I guess they think women can't be cartel drug women. They can't be engaged in human smuggling and trafficking. Again, you have to sit there and ask, I mean, who comes up with these things? Well, yeah. They will not arrest adult women, family groups, or unaccompanied minors. The Biden administration has exempted them from the pandemic expulsion rules and will turn them over to the Border Patrol as usual. Migrants and family groups have swamped the border, turning themselves in to exploit an administrative practice of legalizing and freeing hundreds of thousands of them, which is often thought to have driven the mass migration crisis to nationally historic heights. The DPS began making criminal trespass arrests in July along state-built fencing, charging 1,300 illegal migrants with the misdemeanors so far. Yes. So what happens? They charge them. Again, they get deported. But if you're female, you don't get deported. Very, very sexist. My suggestion is you go to this article and read it. The details here are incredible. I love Todd's work, and I can't tell you, I mean, how important I think it is. Todd, you'll find him on things like Fox News. He does a lot of publicity to get the truth out. I think his work is extremely important, and I'm going to keep encouraging you and everybody to, if possible, do what you can to support the Center for Immigration Studies. It's great work and it's needed. Now, we were just talking about human smugglers. We mentioned that in there. And we're going to get into that. That's another news story this week. If you're staying informed, this one, if you're following me on Facebook, if you're in the Sutliffian Report or one of the other groups I put this video into, this one should surprise you. Now, I say that, and you should sit there thinking about this article. I like the New York Post for many reasons. It tends to be a little bit more balanced. And wow, we'll come back. There was some new breaking news I had not heard. We'll talk about that. But Wow. Um, I don't know if you caught that. Again, this story happened early this week on the 19th. Facebook admitted to letting users share information on human smuggling. The author of the article was Mark Moore. Again, this is for the New York Post. I thought this was pretty revealing. Mark Post wrote, Facebook has admitted to allowing users to share information on how to enter a country illegally or request information about how to be smuggled in a letter to Arizona Attorney General. The admission came after Attorney General Mark Brnovich wrote to CEO Mark Zuckerberg to request information about reports that human smuggling and drug cartels are using the platform to advertise their services to help migrants on their dangerous journey and unlawful entry into the United States. Unlawful entry in the United States. If you're allowing people to do things that are unlawful to the United States, doesn't that border on being treasonous? Hmm. Actually, if you're letting in thousands of people and you're creating that venue, that would make you treasonous. At the very least, it would make you seditious. Yet, yeah, keep listening. In his letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland, Brnovich said his office was surprised by Facebook's response. Facebook's policy of allowing posts promoting human smuggling and illegal entry into the United States to regularly reach its billions of users seriously undermines the rule of law, Brnovich wrote. The company is a direct facilitator and thus exasperates the catastrophe occurring at Arizona's southern border. The article continues. Brnovich said he's seeking assistance from the Justice Department because states are largely exempted from enforcing federal immigration laws and certain criminal statutes relating to human smuggling. Oh, so the states can't go after him. The federal government should. Will the federal government do this? That's what it comes down to. I the question should also be to you. How much of your tax dollars are going to people who are not citizens of this country? I mean, you can think about that in terms of refugees or illegal migrants, but when you start looking at it as a much wider venue, it will shock you. There is a site called USA Spending. I think it's .org. I'm just going to verify that. I used to use this site every day. USA Spending, pretty sure it's a .org, um, tracks grants and expenditures and things like that. Why I found this site shocking and, like I say, shocking and mind blowing. And I'm just checking. It might be a .gov. USA Spending. Let me just check that one. And the .org didn't work so fast. I think it's USA Spending.gov. Why I like this one. Yeah, it is USA Spending.gov. You get to see where the individual grants go to. I found a lot of details. It actually saved myself on writing some Freedom of Information Act requests by just going to the site. When you start looking at the amount of money that our government sends outside of this country, it's phenomenal. I mean, this is stuff that does not help the citizens of this country. It supports people from all over the world. But my personal thoughts are we spend way too much on other people than we do on our own. That's my personal belief. I think you need to take care of home first. Again, if Facebook is admitting, I want to go back, if Facebook is publicly admitting to creating these crimes, I mean, taking money to get people to come here illegally, they either should be forced to shut down or face such a heavy fine that they will never again do something like this again. Facebook doesn't do. I mean, they'll do whatever they want. They don't care, unless it hurts them in the wallet. That's how Mark Zuckerberg operates. If something doesn't hurt his wallet, I mean, if it hurts his wallet just a little bit, he doesn't care. And that's one of the things we have to think about. What will hurt Zuckerberg empire of Facebook? That would hurt them financially if they're being allowed to do things that are against the law. What will stop them from doing this activity? That's what the federal government should be engaging in to figure it out. They're going to have to do some research because it doesn't seem to matter that what they're engaging in is against the law. Yet, again, if they continue to do this, it's because they do not care. Now, another thing we mentioned in Todd's article and earlier is we talked about underage migrants. Now, they're not stopping them at the border. So what's happening? And this article, when I saw it, I just sat there like, whoa, because this article is about New York State. Yeah, this is another New York Post article. I was surprised this week. I found a lot in the Post. It's not something I do very often. I don't spend a lot of time reading the Post, but these articles just came up, and I sat there kind of shocked for this one. This article is by Miranda Devine, Jack Morfitt, Kevin Sheehan, Christopher Dowski, and Bruce Golding. They wrote an article entitled Biden Secretly Flying Underage Migrants into New York in the Dead of Night. Oh, think about that. Plane loads of underage migrants are being flown secretly into suburban New York in an effort by President Biden's administration to quietly resettle them across the region, the Post has learned. Okay, we're a long ways from New York. We are a long ways from New York. How is that? I mean, why are they shipping them here? Again, I'm in New York. Why are they shipping so many people here? You have to sit there and ask questions. Why? What's the real reason to ship so many people here? And why do you do it in the dead of night? Well, because you don't want anybody to know, and what they don't know can't hurt them is the Biden belief. Oh, okay. So these charter flights originate in Texas, according to the article, where the ongoing border crisis is overwhelming local immigration officials. So if you move the people that were there far away so nobody can see them where they were, then the problem goes away, right? No. Yeah. Yeah, make the problem go away. The charter flights, yeah, think about this. Again, who's paying for the charter flights? Biden. Who's paying for the charter flights? No, it's not Biden. It's you. So these guys get plane fare. Usually it costs us money when we take a plane, and they're charging it to your tax dollars. Last week, the Post saw 2 planes land in Westchester County Airport, where most of the passengers who got off appeared to be children and teenagers, with a small portion appearing to be men in their 20s. Westchester County's cops stood by as the passengers, whose flights arrived at 10:49 Wednesday and 9:52 p.m. Friday, got off and piled into buses. Some of them were later seen meeting up with relatives or sponsors in New Jersey or being dropped off at a residential facility on Long Island. A Post analysis of online flight tracking data suggests that around 2,000 of the underage migrants have arrived at the airport outside White Plains on 21 flights since August 8th. That's an interesting date. August 8th. Since August 8th. What have we learned about from August 8th? We learned we're not, I mean, again, they haven't touched on ethnicity. They haven't said where they're coming from. The only identifying feature that they have talked about is the age. But that date should be interesting, people, because now we have to start thinking about, since these have been going on since August 8th, are they also flying in underage kids from places from army bases like that had picked up people from Afghanistan? Are they talking about people who came over the border from countries that supported Islam? It's not just Mexican people. It is not just Haitians that have been coming here. No, I mean, this is the truth of the matter. In fact, I'm willing to believe that the vast majority coming over illegally today are not Mexicans. Something that the Border Patrol will refer to as they are OTMs, other than Mexicans. All right. We need to be thinking about those things. Who is coming here? What are their purposes? Because that's part of protecting you and me. This is crazy. I mean, you have to pay attention to these things to find some of these truths out. And it's crazy once you start looking at these things. Now, while I'm talking about this, I have another thing I'm going to share with you about ethics and in government. Um, this one, I love. I keep telling people I love the Washington Free Beacon. I love the work that they do. I love the research they do for their articles. So this one is about the ethical abuses and misuses of power by Democrats, continuing by the Obama Dems, who are still with some power, like John Kerry, um, who has. We should have a reason for distrust, in their role in government. John Kerry is such a great example of ethical abuses and misuses of power, thanks to the financial returns he's getting. But again, where are the ethical got people who are have good ethics? Why aren't they standing up and doing anything? Oh, they feel a compulsion to be silent, maybe. I'd rather get this truth out. And I think the Washington Free Beacon and many good patriots would agree. So again, the Free Beacon did an outstanding article on it. It's titled Kerry's Own Stake in Chinese Investment Group That Funds Company Blacklisted for Human Rights Abuses. So now start thinking about that. John Kerry owns stake in a Chinese investment group and now this company is blacklisted for human rights abuses. So Kerry is engaging in a company, making money of a company that does things to abuse human rights. Think about that. And this man was a Secretary of State. This article is by Alana Goodman. Climate czar John Kerry and his wife have at least $1 million stake in a Chinese investment group that is a major funder of China's artificial intelligence sector, including a tech company blacklisted by the United States for human rights abuses against the Uyghurs, according to financial records reviewed by the Washington Free Beacon. Kerry holds over $1 million in investments in Hill House China Value Fund, LP. According to financial disclosure report he filed at the beginning of the year, Hill House is a top shareholder in YITU Technology, which is involved in China's high-tech surveillance operation against the Uyghur people and helped develop a facial surveillance software for the Chinese government. It sorts individuals by race and ethnicity, according to the New York Times. In 2019, the U.S. Department of Congress added YITU to its trade restriction blacklist for being implicated in human rights violations and abuses in the implementation of China's campaign of repression, mass arbitrary detention, and high-tech surveillance against the Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other members of Muslim minority groups. As special presidential envoy for climate, Kerry has been heavily focused on diplomatic such discussions with China, which is the top global greenhouse gas producer. Kerry has downplayed China's persecution of the Uyghurs while attempting to negotiate climate change deals. So he really thinks that climate change is more important than human rights. This is the man they would put in charge of something other than a paper bag? Yeah, he doesn't know that human rights are more important. This is one of the reasons why I had problems with people who would vote for this man when he was running for president. Some of these things you just sit there and go, why? Why can't you see this? But again, the problem is that a lot of news media don't want you to see these things. I will keep working to get the truth out. I will do what I can to get the truth out. I'm like I say, I kind of marveling that some of these news stories just you sit there and go, what is going on? That this stuff is getting out there. There's another kind of odd news story this week. I saw this just today, and I kind of wondered how I missed it. But I don't know if you're aware, but President Trump's website, where it's a presidential website, was defaced by Muslim hackers this week. You know what they wrote on it? Don't be like those who forgot Allah. You sit there, you hear some of these things, you're like, what? What are you talking about? And that's where things get kind of interesting. I'm waiting for the site to open up. Let me just try. When things don't work one way, I always try a different way. Um, and usually, if I say things like "there's more than one way to skin a cat," um, here we go. So this article is titled "Hackers Deface Trump's Presidential Website. They Urge Readers Not to Forget Allah." This article came out on the 8th this Monday. It's by Solange Rayner. Hackers defaced former President Donald Trump's presidential website and yeah, finally it comes up after I go the other direction. All right, redirected visitors to a page by Turkish hacktivist group Root Ayalidiz, who urged readers to not forget Allah. Do not be like those who forget Allah, so Allah made them forget themselves. Here they really went astray, the site read. The message was in Turkish. The suspected hacker has been blamed for briefly defacing President Joe Biden's official campaign website in November 2020. Biden's website displayed a message in Turkish with the country's flag placed on top of the aliases and usernames such as Marbelli Wareham and Bifarosa Baro S and One Shot. A photo of the 34th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Abdul Hamid II, was also on the site with a footer note saying, "We are the ones who stopped the tanks with their bare hands on the night of July 15th. We are those who killed death that night. We have been waiting for Archer's Hill for 15 centuries. We are the keepers of that golden baron, and that will never miss its shadow on us." This is crazy. I mean, this is where I keep saying we have to, there's some dangers in Islam. We have to look at what their purpose is, what their goals are here. They want a country that endorses Sharia here. And we keep taking more and more in. If you think I'm wrong, my suggestion, you can pick up my book. So just to look at the social norms and to see where these things line up with Islamic scripture. My last book is called The Cancer of Civilization Jihad. Take a look. I'd love to see a review of, review my work on Amazon. Get it shared out because some of this truth, unfortunately, is not being shared. And what happens when some of these things aren't shared? Well, what happens is you get governments that don't want you to know the truth, and they suffer. Those governments suffer. This week we had some of that suffering in the UK. This past week, a Somali Muslim stabbed a member of parliament in the United Kingdom, stabbed him to death in a church. Now, there was an excellent article this week by Robert Spencer in Front Page. He wrote an article. It started out a little after noon on Friday. Sir David Ames, a 69-year-old British member of Parliament, entered Balfair's Methodist Church on Leon Sea in Essex for a meeting with constituents, which he held regularly. Shortly after Ames walked into the church, a Muslim whom AFP describes as a British national with Somali heritage. So he's not a British national. He's a Somali. He's a Somalian who is there. He approached the member of parliament, according to a local councillor, which we would call a lawyer, John Lamb. There were people waiting to see him, and one of them literally got out a knife and just began stabbing him. Ames died of his wounds a few hours later. The Metropolitan Police announced Saturday the early investigation has revealed a potential motivation linked to the Islamic extremism. So Britain once again has a manifestation of the glories of multiculturalism and mass migration. Not that any of the obvious lessons will be drawn. This is crazy. I mean, they. This is the truth of the matter is. Oh no, it can't be Islam. They wouldn't do that. That's actually what this article is about. Police have now determined that Islam can't be a motive. Yeah, he has to be insane. He can't have Islam as a motive. That just shows you that they don't really want people to know the motive. Why? Well, if you start to recognize that Islam is a motive behind something called jihad, which is killing of non Muslims, the war to engage non Muslims. If you start to look at history and you find these things over and over and over and over, you find examples of these things. You have to wonder why the governments of the world are not saying no to Islam. Why is this not a concern to them? I will never stop being confused by that one. France is now in a position where they have to think, are we going to be a Muslim country or not? So that's why this week, probably the most important article I'm going to share is next. France is at a deciding point. They're at a tipping point. They realize that. They realize they no longer can be safe. And, I saw this article and I want to post it up on walls all over the country, all over this country, United States. I'd love to post it all over the country in Canada because this is extremely important. Giulio Maiati put this out on Sunday. I think it was Sunday, 17th, 15th, 16th, it would have been Sunday. Starts out, quote, where Islam takes hold, it is forever. Islamism is based on Islam. Okay, that's a made up word, Islamism, which no one has the right to criticize. But in your countries, it is also plays a role in democracy and the rule of law. Islamism exploits these values. Since democracy recognizes all opinions, from the far right to the far left, it's obliged to recognize Islam as well. All those who do not commit attacks, or violent acts are in principle protected in a state of law. Islam thus immediately finds itself in a conquered terrain. It is necessary to fight Islam from the beginning because it is like humidity in a house. Initially, the threat is invisible. It penetrates the walls, which little by little crumble. When you realize it's too late, you have to destroy everything to clean up. It becomes a mission impossible. France is at the stage where it has just discovered that Islam is eroding her home. This is how Algerian novelist Boilem Sansal in L'Express recently described the level of Islamization in France. He wrote, quote, in 2050, we will be a half Islamic country. In 2100, we will be an Islamic republic, according to Eric Zemmour, the journalist and presidential hopeful in 2022. This difficult but staggering reality denounced by Zemmour is recognized by everyone, even on the left. Radical left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon predicted the same kind of scenario, calling it creolization by 2050. In The Grand Manipulator, the journalist Mark Endewald reveals what France's President Emmanuel Macron said in private on the sensitive issues of immigration. The Elise employees have confided to me that in recent months, especially on the issue of immigration, Macron has not hesitated in front of his colleagues to take up the Eric Zemmour formula on the Great Replacement. He's obsessed with it. The ostensible fault of the French historian Georges Bensoussan was to declare on the radio that immigrants from Middle Eastern countries absorb anti-Semitism from an early age like mother's milk. He was put on trial for incitement to hatred and finally cleared after 4 years. Bensoussan recently told Le Figaro what is happening to his country. Quote, For safety reasons, Jewish children have massively abandoned public education in the suburbs, where is a climate that recalls the worst memories of the Jewish Maghreb. It is a French defeat and not a Jewish defeat because the whole of French society is threatened by what threatens Jews today. The Seine Saint Denis has lost 80% of its Jewish population in 20 years. The Ben Sosin provides other impressive numbers. Quote, more than 500 districts in France are declared sensitive. To put it bluntly, we are talking about several million people who are subject to Islamic law. Now, that's if that's a shock, it should be. This will decide the next presidential election. France's General Directorate for Internal Security has mapped 150 districts in possession of controlled by the followers of Islam. These neighborhoods have become enclaves in the hands of fundamentalists who shape the area according to their ideology, which, as the word Islam itself denotes, it is one of submission. In places such as Rubal, the situation is assuming worrying proportions according to Perfect Speaking with Le Firgo, or the center of Perpignan, where aggression, drug trafficking, Muslim communitarianism, racial tensions, and tribal violence force non-Muslims to move elsewhere. Or Les Ards, a district of Toulouse where Arab gangs control the streets in climate of fear. Or Grigny, a district on the southern outskirts of Paris, a lawless territory. Or in Grenoble. The weak Valeurs Actuelles describes the city of Trappes. Has 32,000, 70% cabinets, 70% of whom are Muslim, 40 to 50 different nationalities. Most are born here, wear hijab, kameez, sarul, traditional Middle Eastern clothing. The submission is complete. The church cannot compete with the five mosques. Already in 1997, Le Monde Diplomatique stated that a city like Rebau is predominantly Muslim. Le Figaro refers to Savran, a section of Saint Saint Denis, as home to 50,000 inhabitants, 90% of whom are foreigners, and a neighborhood, Apul, who already housing a Muslim majority. Every 2 weeks in France, a mosque is created and a church disappears, said Eduardo de Lamazet, a president of the Observatory of Religious Patrimony. So they're going to vote. What do you think about this? Now, I have personally met the next guy running for president in France, Eric Zemmour. I met him in 2016. I handed him a copy of my book, Civilization, Jihad, and the Myth of Modern Islam. And we talked for a while, and we both agreed that this was a very sad and dangerous time for France. We both agreed that unless France learned to shut the doors and say no, France was going to disappear. So I think he finds he can no longer be silent. I agree with him, and I wish I could do more than say I agree with him. I wish I could support him in some way that would help him. The only way I think I can do that is probably by helping get my book into French and get it out there for people in France to read. This man has a heart for his country. What can he do? And he would tell you very little right now. Even if he becomes president, he can't do a whole lot, again, because it's his country is, run by, he's not a dictator. If he gets elected, he's not a dictator. It's more of a republic. And who makes those decisions? The people that are voted in. This is where it gets really interesting and things to think about. Who's doing the voting is the next big question. Who's allowed to vote that shouldn't be? And things to think about. My next article comes from Norway. And I saw this, and I've been following this article. It's got to be close to a week. And I have to say, when I first saw this article on this topic, bow and arrow attack. I was looking at the details and the way they described the guy who did this. In the back of my head, I'm going, this is probably a jihadi. But I'm the guy that likes to sit back, and have that proof show up instead of opening my mouth and saying something and not being able to provide you with accurate information. I'd rather have it confirmed. Well, he was a jihadi. Sometimes, like I said, I would like to be wrong, but this is not one of those times. This article came out Monday. Norwegian police say that a Danish man suspected of killing 5 people and injuring 3 others in an attack last week also used stabbing weapons, along with the bow and arrow to kill his victims. Police Inspector Thomas Omholt said it was likely the 37-year-old suspect, identified as Espen Andersen Brathen, first used arrows to wound his victims and then killed them by stabbing them with an unspecified weapon or weapons in Wednesday's attack in Kronsberg, in a town of 26,000 southwest of the capital of Oslo. When it came to weapons, we have previously stated that a bow and arrow had been used, Omaholt told a news conference Monday. Other weapons that have been used are stabbing weapons. We don't want to go out with that kind of stabbing weapon. We're used at all. Witnesses at the scene haven't been questioned. Um, yeah, I want you to think about this. Again, the initial stories just talked about 4 to 5 people being killed by bow and arrow. They did not reveal that this was a jihadi. And now they're telling you this was done by a migrant. But again, they're calling him Danish. He's not Danish. He's a migrant. And this is the problem with getting the story straight. I mean, if you read the papers, the news sources that are not based in the United States or England, you get the facts. This was not a person from Norway that just picked up a bow and arrow and decided to shoot people. It was a person who wanted to engage in jihad. Again, you have to pay attention. You have to watch. And I'm doing what I can to get you the truth. A lot of times that means reading those original articles as they were written. And you can find this information out. What made me originally think that this may be a jihadi is they were hiding his name and they were not identifying anything about him other than like his age. They didn't want to reveal his name. There's a whole bunch of things that they didn't want to do. And the sad, sorry truth is, in Europe, they'll do these things to protect Islam. And yeah, think about it. They won't protect your faith. They won't protect Christianity. They won't protect Judaism. But they do these things to protect Islam. You have to sit there and go, why? Why does Islam need protecting? Why does it get preferential treatment? I mean, if you're not asking those questions, you need to be opening your eyes and asking. It's important that you do, because some of these things you just sit there and go, why? I mean, it's scary. It is scary. Okay, next article I have. Let's see here. It is from Poland. Now, I like some of the stuff I've been seeing from Poland lately. I pulled this out. It's a straight from Poland. No, sorry, Sweden, I think this article came from. But it is an article about Poland that I thought was very, very interesting. In fact, it just came out this past Friday, and I missed it again. I try to stay up, but some things go past. And this past Friday, a new Polish law was passed to stop migrants. Now, this is a really good law that they passed. The Polish Parliament approved an amendment to the law that will make it possible to stop migrants directly at the border. In addition, it must be possible to ignore asylum applications that come from people who have to come to the country illegally. According to the new law, an alien who is stopped after crossing the border illegally will have to leave Polish soil. The person will also be banned from entering the country for a period between 6 months and 3 years. The government's plan to build a border wall to prevent migrants from crossing the border from Belarus was also approved by Parliament. The wall is expected to cost 353 million, just over 3.5 billion Swedish kroner. The government has just justified the masonry construction um, masonry construction with more and more migrants, most of them from the Middle East crossing the border into Poland. So again, they're thinking about a wall to protect their country to keep people from coming in. Ooh, you know, intelligent. They're talking about protecting their people first. Strangely, that is not happening in the United States. It's not happening in many of the countries around the world, simply because they don't want us to know the truth. They don't think it's important to protect your own. Well, this is called divide and conquer, people. That's what it is all about. They are doing what they can to keep you from learning what's going on. Some of these things, again, you sit there and you go, why? How is this happening? And when you start to pay attention, you're like, oh my gosh, it's hard to believe. My next article actually comes from Israel. And I saw this morning and had to include it. Again, I missed this article last week. Came out Friday, the day after the show, but I see some humor in this. Maybe I'm off, but I I like Palestinian Media Watch. They do an excellent amount of work there. I like it because there are things that they catch that most people don't. This article by Non-Jacques Zilberdeck is titled "The New Palestinian Symbol: The Spoon." The PA is still bragging of the escape of 6 terrorist prisoners in September, despite their recapture. The terrorists succeeded escaping by widening the hole of the shower drain pipe in the floor of their cell with a spoon, and then fleeing through the underground piping system. The PA has turned the spoon into a symbol. One example is this as a trailer they made for the weekly Palestinian Authority TV program Giants of Endurance, a program made exclusively for the benefit of the terrorist prisoners who enjoy access to a Palestinian Authority TV in the Israeli prisons. The trailer shows a sculpture of a fist clutching a spoon and a spoon decorated with a keffiyeh and the Arab headscarf. Oh, and the TV host is saying this. Excuse me. Our map is one, and we will not be divided. And our heroes have taught you, Israelis, a lesson that your gate of barbed wire won't close on freedom, and that your security system can be brought down by a spoon wrapped in a keffiyeh of Palestinian heroism. Yeah. Palestinian Media Watch has exposed that this PA TV program services the terrorist prisoners, directly addressing them with greetings and updates from their relatives outside prison. Among the updates for the prison are the growth and development of children born of sperm smuggling out of prison. I mean, you sit here, you hear these things, you have to be asking questions. You have to be. Some of these things are just a little bizarre. Wow. I mean, ooh, a spoon. There are cartoons they're putting out there with a spoon. How important the spoon is. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. I mean, to me, it's just silly. Um, yeah. I just don't see the sense of how is that going to, how is a spoon going to get people to stand against Israel? Well, it doesn't matter to them as long as you're standing against Israel. It's all that matters. But you got to sit there. To me, it's just silly. But again, nonsensical. What do we expect from people who are jihadis that want to kill non-Muslims? You have to look at it that way, unfortunately. I have an article from it's kind of a follow-up article. I reported this past, I believe it was this past summer, on a terrorist who female, who attacked somebody with a knife and stabbed them. And now she's in prison. And what do you think she's done? She attacked someone else. This article came from 9news.com.au. Terrorist proudly admits to committing another attack while in Melbourne prison. Terrorist. Well, why don't we say jihadi? Oh, that's more where we should go. A convicted terrorist has admitted to committing another terrorist act, this time while in Melbourne prison, because she's proud of it, a court has heard. Mamona Shoma, 28, faced the Victorian Supreme Court and pled guilty to engaging in a terrorist act while incarcerated at Ravenhall Corrections Center. Shoma attacked a fellow prisoner in October of last year, stabbing the prisoner with a pair of garden shears. The victim survived the attack, needing just 5 stitches, but the court heard the victim was suffering significant emotional effects from the offense. Shoma's lawyer, Tim Marsh, told the court his client was proudly pleading guilty to the crime. I don't think she gets it. The reason why Miss Shoma makes those admissions is because she's proud of what she did, he said. Shoma is serving a 42-year sentence in the Dame Phyllis Frost Women's Prison with a non-parole period of 31 and a half years after engaging in a terror act in February 2019. She was in Australia on a student visa for 8 days when she attacked her homestay host with a kitchen knife. Yes, I did write about this last year. Yes, I did. It was I'm saying I should say I talked about this. Oh my gosh. That poor Jen, he invited her there again because she was going to school. He was trying to help a student and for no reason at all. In fact, that's one of the things the article talks about. It's why she's getting so much time is he had no expectation, no worries, no reason to worry at all. And she just snuck up and stabbed him in the back, if I remember correctly, repeatedly. He almost died from this. It's kind of, yeah. If you saw the pictures and you looked at this, you'd be sitting there like, whoa. And well, all the time she was doing this, and she did stab him in the neck as well, um, in front of his 5-year-old daughter. All the time she was doing this, as she was when she did stab the man in prison, she's yelling Allahu Akbar. Yeah. Isn't that something we usually hear jihadis say? We have to stop calling these acts of terrorism. You can call them acts of treason. That'd probably be more accurate. You can call it an act of murder, premeditated murder. You can call it an act of attempted murder. But terrorism generally only gets a charge of 20 years. These are acts of treason, people. It doesn't matter where these things happen, they are fighting against your country. And that's part of the issue. Something to think about. And why is this stuff being kept from you? I don't have a good answer. They don't want you to hear the truth. That's the only thing that makes sense. One of my I'm running out of articles because I probably didn't spend as much time as I normally would because I've been doing other things this week. It's been a nice busy week preparing for what's going to be happening in a couple weeks here, and I'll promote that. The Iron Sharpens Iron Conference in Rochester, New York, at the First Bible Baptist Church. I will be there. I'm looking forward to it. This is something big. I'm not speaking at this conference, but I will be there. So I want to share another article here. Bangladesh. A man who places Quran in Hindu temple sparked deadly Muslim riots is Muslim. And this comes from, again, in Bangladesh. It's by the Dhaka Tribune. And I want to talk about this. In one of my in my last book, I talk about deception and about lying and how that's acceptable and under Islam, if it furthers Islam. And one of the stories that I talk about in the book is a story that happened in Germany where they found a Quran that was torn up in shreds and used as toilet paper. And as they followed through on this story and they did a lot of looking at it, they discovered that it was a Muslim who tore the Quran up and used it as toilet paper. But all the time they build this story as a non-Muslim had come into their place and done this as an act of hate. Instead, it was used to proclaim hate against non-Muslims. So here we have the same story type of thing. In this case, they have a man taking a Quran and putting it in the hands of an idol. So the Muslims got all upset and they rioted. So this is something to think about. They actually did some research. They caught this man on tape doing these things. He's a the article from Dhaka Tribune is titled "Comilla resident Iqbal placed the Quran on a puja idol." This article came out yesterday. Law enforcers are trying to arrest him. Police have identified him. The man named Iqbal Hussain, 35, son of Nur Ahmed Alam from Sanjukar area city, had kept the Quran at Nanjur Digar Parapuja Mandap in Comilla on October 13th. Police identified Iqbal's involvement after analyzing the video footage of surveillance cameras. Camilla's superintendent of police, Farouk Ahmad, confirmed on Wednesday, but he could not be arrested. Why? He's the cause of... I mean, think about this. He caused those riots. He cannot be arrested? What's the cause he can't be arrested? Because it is allowed under Sharia. Their countries are, if you're in an Islamic country, it's ruled by Sharia. If you're allowed under Sharia to deceive people for the purpose of furthering Islam, they don't really have a reason to arrest him. They might be allowed to celebrate him, which is even worse. Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, some of this stuff, you just sit there, the reasoning behind some of these things, you just sit there and go, wait, that doesn't make sense. But again, you have to understand some of the backgrounds. You have to look at these things. Some of these things are hard to accept, but they are reality. It's not something I am looking for to find these things. Again, these articles are things that have been kept from you. I do go out and look for the news. I try to get the original news stories and not just stick with the first place I see them. Here's another article on Somalia. And Somalia is not safe if you're Muslim. It's not safe if you're Christian. It's not safe if you're Jewish. It's not safe for anyone. They will stand up against you. They will fight against you for telling the truth. Now, this article is by, again, Daily Saba. Let me just pull this up. I am running low on juice, so I'm probably going to go off soon for the Blog Talk Radio, just because I am about out of phone. I did not expect to use my phone today, unfortunately. That's on the system that booted me out for no reason at all, but yeah. The article states at least 3 people were killed and several wounded this past Tuesday evening when a suicide bomber blew himself up at a busy restaurant in Somalia capital Mogadishu's Yakshiid district, according to a police official. Meanwhile, an intelligence officer and 2 bodyguards were killed after a landmine explosion targeted his vehicle in Daniel district in Mogadishu earlier in the day. A police officer who spoke to Andalu agency after the attack confirmed there were other casualties. The suicide bomber blew up in front of the restaurant that is frequently frequented by local youth, killing at least 3 people and wounding several others. He said an ambulance carrying the paramedics and security officers reached the scene and the wounded were taken to hospitals. No group has yet claimed responsibility, but Somali-based al-Qaeda-affiliated group al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for recent attacks in the Horn of the African country. Yeah. So, again, this place is not safe. And one of the things President Biden has done is in revoking all the stuff that has happened. What am I talking about? Well, he revoked Trump's. If you're from certain countries and you promote terrorism, he promoted this bringing of people to this country. Sorry, Trump stopped people coming to this country who are in countries that promoted terrorism and stuff like this. So the Somalia is not really. There's a question here: who runs Somalia? I would say it's run by warlords. It's run by. It's not. That's one of the reasons why if you have a country that doesn't have a truly central government that can't control people in this respect, that you can't document who people are. People are coming from the country without any form of documentation. It's not safe for the people here. And what I mean by that is if we can't tell who you are, we can't do any background checks. So again, you have to protect the people in your country first. That's how governments are supposed to do. And if you're not doing that, that's a problem. We've had that problem here for a number of years now where they haven't been protecting us. And it's not just under Democrats, it's under Republicans also. And that is a problem. Now, I've been talking to good men like Todd Bensman, who actually do the reporting on these things, and he's former DHS. He understands. He talks to me. I mean, when I ask him questions about the difficulties in vetting people, he's very serious about this because it takes time to vet people. This is the number one reason I have problems with the amount of people they brought out of Afghanistan. Close to 100,000 people the United States brought to America out of the country. And the vast majority, I mean, I did a FOIA on this. I'm waiting for the results. I sent it to the State Department because technically they're supposed to be the ones in charge of this. Technically. I would have sent it to the armed forces. But again, they're not supposed to be the ones in charge of this. So the question is, I mean, I have a lot of questions about who really is in charge of this mess now, because the vast majority of those who came, from what I am reading and learning about, did not have any identification. If they didn't have identification, how did they get on the bus? Or on the plane? How did they get on the plane? Are you saying that U.S. soldiers, this is the thing that really bothers me the most, U.S. soldiers put people on the plane that they didn't know. They didn't know if there was ISIS. They didn't know if they were Al-Shabaab. They didn't know if they had any connections to terrorism. All they did was just put people on the plane that wanted to get on the plane. How are they protecting the United States if they're doing something like that? Again, I told people back in August when this happened, this was a planned fiasco. It was not a botched operation by any means. This was planned. The purpose of this plan fiasco was to mask that they were going to bring 100,000 Muslims here. Well, we're looking at numbers right now of people in the United States. This is the part that bothers me most. They're talking about people in the United States, not just in other camps, other military bases around the world. And Mr. Also Without Reason, I like your question. What cities did they drop the Afghans in America? We can't know because they won't let us know. There are only about, I've seen 5 cities mentioned. They've talked about cities in Texas. They've talked about cities in California. They've talked about cities in, what was the other state? Florida, Texas. And where I was looking at the ones I was seeing is they were primarily, here's the part that got me. They were primarily Republican states. There's I believe it was West Virginia was one. I could be wrong. And, I looked at this. One hospital, I believe it was in the West Virginia area, they closed the hospital. Why did they close the hospital? Because they had to take care of the Afghans before they took care of the United States people in the United States. Okay, this is not an army base hospital. This is out in the public. So there were so many people who needed medical care. They only allowed people from outside the country to get medical care came from outside the country. Again, I have serious issues when you don't take care of your own first. I look at it this way. If you're a father or a mother, your responsibility is to your children first. Okay, you take care of your wife, you take care of your children. As the dad, you're responsible for providing. Okay, take care of your own. Get your butt out there, get a job, provide food and shelter for your children and wife. That's your job as a parent. Okay. If you're providing for yourself, great. My first time actually going out and buying something for myself after my kids got older and out of the house, I remember being scared. But we're not doing that. We're not taking care of our own first. This is a problem. Yes, I saw California in there. I think it was West Virginia. Um, I'm I honestly think that Biden believes, I mean, this is the other thing we have to go back to. When Biden ran for president, he called for jihad. Now, if you think I'm messed up saying that, you need to go back and look for videos on YouTube where Biden calls for jihad. There's tons of them out there. My favorite one is the one done by Act 17, the David Woods video. I saw that video when it was happening. I went back and I looked at it. Like, I had to look at it a couple times because it was so hard for me to believe. I mean, I knew the minute he said it, it wasn't. You sit there like, how bad, how stupid can you be? But again, I'm looking at this man as a man with dementia. He just does what he's told. Some of these things you sit here and, I know what dementia is, unfortunately, because I have someone close to me who has that, and Biden exhibits all of those symptoms. I've worked in, I'm a person who has worked in nursing care facilities for the elderly. I am a person who wants to see change. I want to create change. I want to make those things happen. Now, here's the thing I think about that. And I want Christians to be the creators of the change. I think we have the job of being the creators of. I'm just having difficulty with Christians not doing that. I have a difficulty with pastors not doing that. So here's the stuff I'm going to pull up, and I'm going to share with you. I've got time today to do this, and I'm just going to do it. So bear with me. I'm going to pull this article up, and I have to figure out where I put it first. Hold on. What I want to do is share this with everybody. I'm going to close out Black Talk Radio. And what I want to do is pull this up because I think I'm just going to say goodnight to those people on Black Talk Radio. Forgive me, guys. My suggestion is if you're listening to the Blog Talk Radio, come and look at this stream on YouTube because I'm going to be sharing something there that will blow your mind. So I'm just simply going to sign off of Blog Talk Radio. So good night, everybody there, and I will continue with YouTube. Now, YouTube and Facebook, the stuff I'm going to share with you, my suggestion, if you're interested, email me. I am going to tell you my email now. I will post it. I'll post it here, and we'll see if it'll take it to some of you. I don't know who can and cannot see it, but if now, after you get this and you want a copy of what I'm going to be sharing, please do send me an email requesting this. Now, give me just a second because I did not plan to be sharing this today, and I'm just becoming more and more convinced that Christians have this duty to stand up. I have created a way for Christians to do what I call stand up. Um, Stand up to me means standing up and no longer being silent. Stand up means to me doing what God requires of you as a believer, because you can't just simply be silent. Now I can share that. So I'm just going to share my screen, and let me just hit share screen. And I think this is it. Nope, that's not it. Hit share for a second. And I'm just going to have to pull this up. Just here we go. Can you? Okay, there we go. As you can see, this is a class type situation I created for a club that I'm recommending people call. I would call it Stand Up. And if you are interested in putting this in your church and have any, you want someone to come talk to your pastor or whatever, to do this, I am willing to do that. I'll be honest, I haven't been able to do this in my own church yet. I'm trying to do this. No, what I did do is I talked to my pastor, and I did want to check, is there anything in here that would cause a church to violate their oath of 501c3? And the answer is no, because that's the first question I had for my pastor. And I wrote this for the purpose of not taking away a church's status of nonprofit status. So pay real close attention. So in this, I wrote this, and again, the theme of stand up is the battle belongs to the Lord, not to us. Okay. My pastor's, his name is Alphonse Galvano, and this guy has no problem calling sin, sin, and I love it. He preaches the truth, he preaches the Bible, and that to me is outstanding. One of the things he said recently, a couple years ago, he said, when we do nothing, we legitimize it. And I think about that in today's world, and oh boy, are we in trouble? Because if you look at CRT, how did that get out there? Well, the Christians did nothing. They were silent. What are they doing today? Are they standing up? No. Are they making a little bit of noise? Yeah, they're making a little noise, but they're not standing up. So this is my problem, and is why I've put this together. So I'm just going to read through this and share it with you. I said, when we are being forced to legitimize the teaching and training of our children into sin or misinformation by doing nothing, we can't be silent. We must stand up. Can you understand that, people? We must stand up. Likewise, when our freedoms given to us by God are being trodden, and on that, these freedoms given to us by God are being trodden on, that are guaranteed to us by the U.S. Constitution, we cannot be silent. Again, we must stand up. So that's the philosophy. Mission. Now, mission of this organization is to educate and activate those in the church body, the Christians. And I've written one of these for synagogues, okay? Same exact thing. I just changed church and some of these other words to reflect that it's a Jewish organization. So think about this: to educate and activate those in the church body who are concerned about the world around them. This can and does include having a knowledge on how to share the gospel. This includes having a belief something is anti-biblical and learning what the word of God says, not just having a belief. This means being armed with information. Activating is about finding ways to act in our community, to stand up and be heard as representatives of Christ first, family second, and country third. This is not a political party group. The beliefs expressed in this group will solely align with the Word of God. So keep thinking about this. Doesn't that sound like church? Doesn't that sound like what the church should be doing? So here's what I think about with education. What are we going to do first? How are we going to get this to work? Well, I say let's start out. We invite experts to speak to the group body within the church. This would be an internal education move we would do first. We must become knowledgeable in order to share information with others. So I propose this I would look at these topics and go in this particular order. So my first topic I have here is God in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. I think that is I took that. Um, I went to Bethel Full Gospel in Rochester, New York, and that was a class offered, and our professor was a history professor at the State University of New York in Brockport. We call it SUNY Brockport, and he was outstanding. Phil Giles is a former pastor that I knew of and adored, and has long gone, unfortunately. Next, you would go when we talk about freedom of speech. Again, how is this guaranteed by, what does it mean with the Bible, and how is it guaranteed in the Constitution? Freedom of religion. How is this important with the Bible? What does it mean in the Constitution? Due process. Now, I am going to keep harping on that one for a long, long time. But due process is something that absolutely is guaranteed by the Constitution and is quickly being taken away from people by people who are in power. I do not consider those people working on taking this away people that are legally in government. Because if you're doing that, you're going against God, number one. That's a problem. And there's more, again, those type of things are going. My next topic I would put in here are videos of Soviet Marxism planned for the United States. And so I would start by sharing the Yuri Bezmenov interview. Now, if you do quick searches, and if you're looking for the links, I can easily provide these. I have provided some of them here. A video on how Marxism and Christianity are incompatible. Have three or four of those. Video on CRT, which I'm sharing the one that I did. That particular one you will not find on my YouTube channel. You have to go to Rumble to look for it. You can type in Paul. You can type in Sutliffian Report in Rumble, and you will find that one. It was banned by YouTube because it was supposedly medical misinformation. I find that hilariously funny because we were talking about critical race theory. I mean, maybe, we talked about something in there. Uh, again, in YouTube, you can get banned or anything banned without any factual misinformation. And that's the stuff. Social media will work against you when you share truth. And that's why I have a lifetime ban from LinkedIn. Sharing facts. I'd rather share the truth, and I'm sorry, I would rather do that and then enjoy my time on social media. All right, COVID, facts versus fiction. And my first question here is, where are the facts? So my first thing I'm going to tell you, go to cdc.gov. First thing I want everyone to do when we're talking about those things, if you're going to set this up, go to cdc.gov, show people how to find VAERS data. If you're going to do this in a situation, I recommend having people come with their laptops. And if they don't have Excel, have them download a demo version of it on that day, and then do this. There's a reason, because you can open and view it, and you can show people how to filter the information. It's it's overpowering. It's sickening. And if your eyes aren't open when you look at that, something's wrong with you mentally. And that's, I'll just put it that way. It sounds mean. It sounds hard, but that's where I'm standing on that. I want you to look at and we'll talk about the case. I would say talk about the case study of Sweden. Sweden didn't close. Does Sweden have a problem today with COVID-19? No. And that's where I think things are important to look at. Proper behavior in speech. Now, this is where I think is really important. Being an example of Christ in all that we do, returning kindness for insults. I'm not saying you have to sit there and let somebody hit you and punch you. You only have, I'm a firm believer in turning the other cheek, but again, you only have two cheeks. All right, you can turn the other cheek, but that doesn't mean you have to sit there and let somebody pound you. I won't say that God doesn't put people in those positions. I have been put in that situation, and I did sit there and take quite a beating one day. Here's the funny thing about that one day that happened. I didn't have a bruise. fact, the people came running down to, because I felt that that was what God wanted me to do. And they even made me take off my shirt. They wanted to look all over me because they saw this kid beat me. And I felt that day that that was what God wanted me to do, was to do nothing and let him do this. And I was able to be a witness that day to him for Christ. And I don't know if he became a Christian, but I met him years later, and he was still trying to figure out how I could do that. And I told him that's what I felt God wanted me to do. So this last section I have for stand up: action. Actions may include letter writing, calling politicians and protests. They may include attending Board of Education meetings and other gatherings. Often an action of silent presence sends a message. Words do not always need to be said. While words are important and have their place, we are representatives of Christ. Being present should mean we come with knowledge as to why we are there and why we, as believers in Jesus, are standing up to be counted, regardless of what we feel God wants us to do. I mean, we need to stand up for him. We must do this as examples of God's love. It's, we can't be silent. That's what it comes down to. Now, anybody who would like a copy of this, I'm going to do some more work on this as time goes on. I want to have this concept done and fixed by November 6th. And yes, XYZ, I love what you just said. You are 100% on target. I have been to Willow Creek back in, wow, 1990. I was at Willow Creek visiting. I've never felt comfortable with Bill Hybels. Rick Warren, I couldn't tell you why he gives me the heebie-jeebies back then, but they are not real believers. And I have some people I just can't deal with. I love Sharam Hayden's talks about how evil Chrislam is. I just tell people, if you think you can combine Christianity, a belief in a God that loves you, with a belief that you should be killed because you don't follow Allah, you gotta be kind of nutty to put those things together. I don't know how people can be that incredibly stupid unless they are. This is where I would say those pastors are either one, mentally ill, or incredibly deceptive. I'm going with the incredibly deceptive because they have built their audience on deception. There's a man out there called Joel Osteen, really good at deception. And his target audience is not the average person. No, his target audience is older people, people with dementia. And why does he target them? He wants their money. He knows that they have money and they're at their end of their days and they could probably share that money with him. So I have no respect for men like Joel Osteen, things like this. I don't have a problem calling them out because their heresies are there. And we as believers have to be ones to share the truth. That means we can't be silent. I'm willing to go wherever to speak the truth. That was my original goal before COVID hit. I was going to retire and travel and speak. That was my goal, to get the truth out. It didn't happen thanks to COVID. But I'm to say God's used the time to train me and change me, to make me into a better person. And I think that's something we should all be working on. I would say, as much as I put that together, as a sketch, I would say that would take that particular outline that I shared would take maybe 2 months of a weekly meeting. 2 months, maybe. So I work with a local patriots group. And in my community, I'm out in Monroe County, New York State. There are several different conservative type organizations here, and they all have pretty much their own agendas. And we have a way of sharing what's happening in our community. Well, can you imagine if stand-up groups across the world got this kind of information? That to me would be exciting. What would happen if you could just you pick up your can you imagine if people from stand-up groups, Christian groups all over the United States got these events and they say, okay, there's going to be a protest against mandates at your local hospital, and it's on this particular day. So you have, let's say 20 or 30 churches in your community, and they all have a stand-up group, and they say, we're going. They individually decide that it's important to make a representation for Christ at that event. I'm not saying the pastor has to make the choice. Can you imagine what would happen if Christians... Now, this is the thing I found fascinating. I don't know if I can share this. I went to an event on YouTube that here locally at a hospital where people were protesting the mandates. You know what I found at that event? I'd say near 100% of the people there were Christians. I knew people that I had not seen 10, 20, 30 years that I was running into there. They were all believers. I want to see that happen with purpose. Because the one thing, I may not like Rick Warren, but there are some phrases he uses that make sense. Purpose-driven. Yes, Christians are to be purpose-driven. Do I think Rick Warren is deceived and deceptive? Yes. Do I think even the deceived and deceptive can be used of God? Absolutely. Do I think Rick Warren is bad for America? Is he bad for Christians? Absolutely. Don't trust that man at all. Anyone who promotes, I still don't like the term interfaith. There is so much deception there, in that kind of thing. There is no reasoning for interfaith, as I can see. Dean Getcher, from the church, how the liberals used Hegelian. Oh, so also within reason. I studied to be a pastor in the 80s. And yes, I personally hated Hegel. When I had to learn about him, I thought he was one of the nuttiest idiots that I'd ever had to learn. I went to Roberts Wesleyan College from 1982 to 1989. I'm one of those people who had to flunk out of college to learn how to pass. I didn't know how to study. I had to make that choice to... I flunked out. I was really suicidal back then. It was fall to winter of 1983. Here I am, my first full year done, my first fall semester as a sophomore, and I flunked out. Talk about suicidal. Here I am studying to be a pastor, and I flunked out. So I took a semester off and really frustrated with my life, and went to work, got a job. And I learned that, I had to find a way to study. I was very frustrated. So I went and I took a class, and I said to myself, I'm going to find a different way. What I couldn't do was take notes in a classroom setting. I just couldn't do it. I had a learning disability that wouldn't let me do it at the time. Now I'm in my late 50s, and believe it or not, I can do that now, but I couldn't then. So what I learned to do was I took a textbook, since we buy them. I highlighted everything I thought was important, and then I transferred everything that was highlighted into an outline format, and I took it into the classroom. And whatever the professor said that I highlighted from those notes, that was exactly what was on the test, 100% of the time for every class I took from that point on. So I went from being the F D student, sometimes C student, to the B plus A and mostly A student. So it gets funny. Again, I'm the guy who flunked out of college. I When things got added up, I went to grad school and I became one of the heads of the honor society. So, God does crazy things. But Hegel, I I've never understood why anybody would compare him and his usage. I don't see his thoughts as being godly or Christian. Uh, I have a love of philosophy, and I just don't. I think yes, liberals are ruining the whole planet, but I don't think I think we've got to move. And as much as I think we've got to, they believe they need to control the language, and I think we need to take that role from them. We have to stop calling them liberals. We can call them Marxists, we can call them communists, but I think liberals is no longer a good description. As I've said with this quote vaccine, we should not be calling it vaccine. Every time somebody says that word, we should correct them. Sorry, it's gene therapy. Why are they calling it gene therapy? Well, because until August of this year, their websites called it gene therapy. Oh, wow. Oh, so we're using their language. Those are things we have to do. We can no longer accept, because liberalism used to be actually something that we would consider proud to be as conservatives. We were liberal. The concept, again, they're changing, claiming words. It's funny because they used to get upset. I say taking control of the language is something we have to start doing. And by doing that, I'm also saying we have to be the ones, which I didn't put in that class thing. I think I should put in. We have to be the ones demanding a return to logic. I continue to meet, and again, we would have called them liberals, and now I'm calling them Marxist, commies, whatever. A couple years ago, I don't think I would have understood how much communism and Marxism really falls in to this. But one of my father's friends, I grew up. I'm a music teacher's kid, and one of his former principals, I grew up meeting these people every year. We'd see them do things with, and he's what I would have called a flaming liberal, and he, again, a principal, and he wrote to me as somebody. I wrote back and I says, I have respected you for my entire life. However, today, you moved from what you just did in your argument is use something called circular reasoning. And you, as an educator, should know that circular reasoning is used by persons that we might decide to classify if you're using, the book for diagnosing mental illness. We use circular reasoning is actually used as a symptom of mental illness. So I told him I was concerned. Now he's all freaked out. Oh, wow, how could you do that? But because the fact is, it is a symptom of mental illness. So again, we have to go back. I think we cannot stand strong. We have to have a strength in apologetics. We have to have a strength in logic. We have to have understanding of fallacies. We have to be able to identify them. I had a good laugh. Was it yesterday or is this? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Watching Project Veritas taking apart one of these other retractos, and they did it with logic. I sit there and I laugh because that is the only success that I can see liberals have is they are great at fallacious reasoning. There is no logic in a communist. There is no logic in a Marxist. It's all about control. They don't have to tell you the truth. They just have to distort the truth. And that's where fallacies can be pointed out. So that's one of the things I think, again, if we are going to put an organization like I'm trying to get out there for everybody, um, I recommend what I've just put up there. If you're interested in my copy of Stand Up, again, that's my beginning document. And if anybody wants to join in with me working on that, great. I mean, I'm willing to put together a Zoom room and we can work on it because I think this is something that needs to be done to help change the face of America. I'm not looking to create a group that's centered. That's one of the crazy things about conservatives. We don't need. We're not the community organizers. We're not going to be directly linked. We don't need that. I actually have that book, Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. But the one I have that I have to go back up and look. I have another book I thought's even more powerful than the one with Michael Savage. There is so many good things out there today that we have to be working on and getting the truth out with. My biggest concern tends to be the dangers of Islam. But we can't talk about those today without talking about the dangers of communism. We can't talk about those today without talking about the insanity of the dangers of the COVID vaccine. 16,000, this might get me banned from YouTube. VAERS data says 16,000 dead from the vaccine. VAERS CDC says that's 1%. I'm citing what CDC says. No more, no less. I'll leave it there. And if they want to fact check me, great. Please do. Please do. Is COVID actually changing the DNA? Can you touch on this? So I would say I am not a scientist. I do not believe that it is changing DNA. However, again, I'm not a scientist. What I can tell you is this. I'm a kid who grew up and went to school in high school. I graduated in 1982. My last biology class officially was around 1984, 85, somewhere in there. I want you to think about that time period. So what we learned in 1984, we have learned leaps and bounds. So that was the last time I took a class. I ended up teaching a biology class in high school because I was a special ed teacher. And the person they had assigned to teach it was scared. So I got stuck teaching. So I'd spend lots of time reading the textbook and talking with people. As I'm looking at RNA, they show this in a video. And I mean, I'm going to encourage everybody to go look for these videos where RNA looks like a zipper, like a mechanical device. If you just type in biology textbook, RNA, and you find these videos, and I kid you not, they look like machines in the human body. So my purpose in having you look at this is this. God has so designed us that these look like machines. Now, what these people have done is try to attempt to take a machine created by God within our bodies for purposes and distort it. Now, my biggest problem isn't what they have done with RNA. My biggest problem is how they created this. There is a woman, medical doctor out there, and I do not have her material on me right now, but she makes the claim that that the Project Veritas video that they're talking about, that where Pfizer admits that they used aborted children, the cells from aborted children, to help create the virus, the vaccine. This woman makes the claim, again, I am not a scientist. I can't prove either way here. She makes the claim that it was not aborted tissue, that it was infanticide. I, again, am not a medical doctor. I honestly don't know whether to believe her or not, but that to me is the thing that makes me the most concerned about this vaccine today. Do I think it should ever be trusted? I think reading the VAERS data does enough to tell you no, you can't. That's why I recommend people to go there and read it for yourself. But again, I am one person. I'm not a medical professional. And I'm going to tell you, if you want to, it's a personal decision. That's the number one thing I'm going to say. It's a personal decision. It's between you and God. I don't recommend it, but again, that's your decision between you and God. I have been researching this. I'm one of the first to actually expose it as a bioweapon. So if you want to check that, go farther back in history on the Sutliffian Report. You'll see in March of 2020, I did a video exposing this was a bioweapon. So YouTube took it down. I said, when they took it down, I appealed. I said, you never watched the video because my proof is in the video. You never looked at it. Well, that's the problem I have with, I will say YouTube does better due process. I'm not saying they're great at it, but they're better than LinkedIn because you get no due process from LinkedIn. You get no chance of appeal. None. Zip, nada. You don't get a chance to even be listened to. So when I asked them to look at the video, they put it back up because my sources in the video were Brad Johnson, a former station chief of the CIA, and a video from 2015 by Leonardo. It's an Italian news show where they're talking about a virus that was communicable between bats, and that China was making it communicable to humans. And I sit there watching this in 2020, and I'm laughing. I mean, what would you think in March of 2020? Would you be laughing? Because their question they keep saying about this is, I don't think this is ethical. Oh, this isn't good. In 2020, you're sitting there watching this, and they're talking about all these people dying from this. Sorry, I sat there laughing all the way through it. But yeah, we have to be people to get out there and tell the truth and get the truth out. If you're daring enough to do that, if you're daring enough to take the program I'm talking about with Stand Up to Your Pastor, reach out to me. I will do what I can to help you. If your pastor is willing enough to have someone come out, or your local Patriots group is willing to have someone come out and talk about the truth about Islam, why it's a danger, reach out to me. I will come. I only ever ask for covering of my transportation at the most. I believe God will bless me with whatever there is. I don't make charge. My goal is to get the truth out. I'm having fun doing that. And that's why I keep doing this every week. That's why I see Eric doing it. Everybody I know in our network does this because we feel that the regular news sources no longer tell the truth. They don't have a compelling need to communicate facts. I'm not a guy who's going to be telling you about sports ever, but I will do what I can to get the truth out that they're trying to hide from you. I have to say good night. God bless you. Thank you for hanging around. God bless. Thank you. Good night. Yeah.